Display. If you would please, thank you.
I have it here.
And Agent Impola, this is part of the recording that took place on June 20th in the basement of the back shop, correct? Back shack.
Back check, yes, sir.
So you see the second line down from the top. So first it's Dan, how many guys? And this is the informant Dan talking to Adam Fox on June 20th at the back shop, back shack, correct?
Yes, sir.
That second line down where it's Adam Fox speaking, he says, for us, a lot. I know Eric Molitor is good to go. That's what he says, right?
Yes,
You know who Eric Molitor is, right?
I do.
And in fact, Eric Molitor is a defendant that's been charged up north. Is that correct?
In Antrim County, yes.
Antrim County for the plot to kidnap the governor, correct?
Um,
I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. For materially supporting a terrorist act.
correct. He was part of the surveillance team.
So he was the one that actually went with Adam Fox. It was with Adam Fox in August, September, all the way to the takedown, correct?
Yes, sir.
He was one that was actively involved in the trainings that occurred after July when my client left for August, September, October, correct?
Yes, sir.
He was at the meetings to discuss the attack plan for the governor, correct?
Yes,
He was part of the surveillance to execute this plan, correct?
yes.
In fact, he was an operator of this plan, correct?
There was discussion about that. He was a medic, and then he discussed being a driver. Ultimately, Adam Fox stated to Dan when he went over his list of final operators that Eric Molitor was not going to be part of the fire team or the squad, but he was going to play a role as potentially a driver or a medic.
Correct, right. So you testified a while ago, you were on the FBI SWAT team, right?
So I was a medic.
HRT.
HRT it's a high level of operators out of Washington, DC. And then there's local SWAT teams. So I was with the local FBI SWAT team, and I wasn't an operator myself. I was a medic.
Correct. So you testified on that SWAT team that there are operators. You weren't an operator because you were a medic, correct?
Correct.
And you were a medic to make sure that you're available in case somebody is injured or harmed when the entry takes place or whatever happens, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you already answered my question, but I'm going to ask you again. On June 20th of 2020, at the Vac Shack, Adam Fox already had Eric Molitor in his group of 3%ers, correct?
He was part of his group. I don't know if they were calling themselves that at the time, but
Okay.
yes, he was one of his guys that he could count on.
So as early as June 20th of 2020, Adam Fox had his own medic, correct?
He had Eric Molitor, yes, and Eric Molitor was a medic, yes.
And you would agree with me that this is the first time, well, strike that. June 18th, there was a protest at the Capitol, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's the first time that Mr. Beller ever met Adam Fox, correct?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I don't know. They saw each other on the 30th, but I don't know if they met at all. But
Okay.
I agree, to my knowledge, the first time for my investigation that they met was the 18th.
And Agent, when I ask you a question, that's what I'm asking for. I'm not asking what you think might have happened or maybe, I'm asking you what you know, correct? Is that fair?
Sure.
And to your knowledge, June 18th at the Capitol at that protest was the first time that Mr. Beller ever saw Adam Fox, correct?
No, that's not correct.
Met with Adam Fox.
I would say it's the first time he spoke with him.
Okay. So, because he may have seen him at the.
Yeah, you may have seen him at
Okay.
the other protest.
And those are the same protests that you testified to yesterday that Mr. Beller broke no laws at, correct?
I can't speak to his intention when he did the action.
Sir, he was never arrested for breaking any laws, correct?
Absolutely, he was
The
never
law
arrested.
enforcement never had to interact and interject and put handcuffs on him and arrest him in any protest, correct?
He certainly was not handcuffed.
So June 20th is the first time to your knowledge, that Mr. Beller actually sat down and talked with Adam Fox, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the same June 20th where they were talking about getting a peace officer to get a warrant to arrest the governor, correct?
Yes, sir.
You also testified regarding the shot back shack. Why I'm having such a problem with that, I apologize. Remember back on Friday, prosecuting attorney said, did Paul go out of that meeting and say that guy's crazy? You remember her asking you that?
Yes.
Your first answer was no, Paul left before everybody else, correct?
Correct.
Then when you went back and looked at it the night before you came back again, you corrected that testimony, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, your corrected testimony was no, Paul and Dan had a conversation in the parking lot after that meeting, correct?
With Ty Garvin, yes.
And Ty Garvin, that's fair.
Yes.
So Paul, Ty Garvin, and Dan actually do have a conversation after this meeting in the back shack, correct?
Yes, sir.
You testified that the audio wasn't working right, or you couldn't quite hear the audio of the conversation between Paul and your informants. That sound fair? During that
I don't
conversation?
believe I testified about that, but I know the audio is clear. I can hear them talking. We made some clips of that. I know there's a period of time when they're walking out of the basement where you can kind of hear pant noise. And they're walking to the parking lot. So it's clear audio, but certainly I can only tell you what I can hear.
Okay. So, but Dan was there, right?
Yes, sir.
And Dan will be testifying here one of these days, correct?
Yes, hopefully.
So Dan would be the one that would be able to testify to what was exactly said after that meeting, correct?
You would have a more complete knowledge than I would. I'm just live monitoring.
Perfect. Shortly after that, last Friday, when you testified with the prosecutor, she asked you, did Paul ever say that Adam Fox is crazy? Recall her asking you that?
I do.
And your answer was no, correct?
Correct.
That's not true, is it?
Well, I have not been able to find recordings of Paul Bellar using the word crazy, but I do believe that's a sentiment that he expressed based on my monitoring of conversations.
This is preliminary exam, volume 1. Hold on to that for a second. Agent Empel, you recall testifying way back on March 3rd of 2021, correct?
I do.
Year and a half ago, sound about right?
Fair.
Could I draw your attention? Page 248. Line, we're going to start at line 15. Now, just to put this in perspective for the jury, this was a probable cause hearing,
Judge,
correct?
is he going to testify
No,
about what
I-
this is, to put it in perspective for the jury? Is he going to ask some questions?
Just go ahead, Mr. Patrick.
This is a probable cause hearing, correct?
Yes, sir.
This is a hearing that's held in district court, correct?
Yes, sir.
This is a hearing to determine if there's probable cause to bind a case over to circuit court. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
When you testify at that hearing, at that probable cause hearing a year and a half ago, you're under oath, just like you are today, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you're under oath, you got to tell the truth, correct?
Yes, sir.
You got to testify to what you recall and what you don't recall, correct?
Yes, sir.
You would agree when you testified back in 2021, that was less than a year from when this investigation was going on, correct?
Yes, sir.
You would agree with me that today we're past 2 years of when this investigation was going on. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
So I'm going to ask the questions that I asked you back on March 3rd of 2021 when you were under oath in district court. We're going to start on line 15 of page 248. Here's my question to you. How many times did your confidential human source advise you that Mr. Bellar said that Mr. Fox is crazy? How many times did he advise you that Mr. Bellar said that? Could you please read your answer?
Sure. I'd have a hard time putting an exact number, but Mr. Bellar did discuss Fox being crazy. I think that's a fair and accurate statement, and it wasn't just one time.
Question, more than once?
Yes.
Question, that he thought Mr. Fox was crazy, right?
Yes.
That's your answer, correct?
Yes, sir.
So in fact, he did say that to your informant, correct?
I believe.
Sir, I didn't ask you. I'm asking you, did he or did he not say that to your informant?
Judge, I'm going to ask that the witness be allowed to finish the answer to the question before he's cut off.
You can give a complete answer.
Mr. Bellar called Mr. Fox a Leroy Jenkins, and Leroy Jenkins, in my mind, means he thinks he's crazy, but it's not using the word, is he crazy? It's a different word. So I think it's fair, and I think it's accurate. And this question is about what Mr. Bellar thought, and I can't tell you exactly what he thought, but in my opinion, I believe anybody who met Mr.
I would
Fox.
object to speculation on what your opinion is. You just said you can't say what Mr. Bellar thought, correct? So I would object to speculation, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Thank you. Show me in there where you talk about Leroy Jenkins when you're answering these questions under oath in district court.
These questions are about what I thought.
And what you thought was Mr. Bellar said Adam Fox is crazy, correct?
I think it's accurate.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to the training on June 28th, which occurred in Munich. My client was present for that training, correct?
Yes, sir.
Adam Fox was present for that training, correct?
Yes, sir.
You testified yesterday that Adam Fox is, I'm sorry, Mr. Bellar is not the one that invited Adam Fox to this training, correct?
Correct.
He gets to the training, and this is the training that for some reason was unable to be recorded, correct?
Correct.
So out of the 1,000 hours, 200 hours, 300 hours, 500 hours, however many hours there are recordings in this case, this particular training was not recorded, correct?
That's correct.
At this training, they're just doing basic training. Is that a fair statement?
It's a general statement. I think the training they did was consistent to some of the other training that the Wolverine Watchman had done. Whether that training is considered basic or not, I guess that's up to interpretation.
There was no training on June 28th specific to kidnapping the governor of the state, correct?
I can tell you what the training was about, but I can't tell you what their intentions were
Okay.
as they trained.
So at the conclusion of this training, Adam Fox asks Mr. Bellar to swear into the 3 percenters, correct?
So Adam Fox addressed the group and asked, from my understanding, the 3 defendants.
That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you I told you in the beginning, I'm talking about my client. I did not
Judge.
ask the group.
Judge, object, witness finishes the answer.
What? I didn't hear your,
Oh, I'm sorry, Judge. I'm just asking that the witness be allowed to finish his answer before he's cut off.
Your Honor,
well, that's why he's objecting, because it's
I'm only
not
asking about Mr.
responsive.
Bellar. I'm not asking about the other group. Every time I ask you a question, it's about my client and my client only. Okay?
Okay.
If I want to ask you a question regarding Joe or Pete, I'll specifically say that because I want to make sure that the jury understands when we're talking about my client and when we're talking about all of them. Is that fair?
Fair.
Okay, you can go ahead and answer if you remember.
At the conclusion of that training, Adam Fox asks Mr. Bellar if he wants to swear into the 3 percenters,
No.
correct? Well, he asked them all. Let me read. That's fair. He asked everybody if they want to swear into the 3 percenters, correct?
Correct.
And that was the group that Adam Fox was in control of, correct? To your knowledge.
So I wasn't live monitoring, so I don't know what words Adam Fox used. So I don't know if he said the 3 percenters or
Okay.
how, based on my debrief with Dan, Adam Fox asked the people there, including the defendants, to swear into a group under his control.
Right.
That it would be allegiance to him.
Right. Mr. Bellar declined that, correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
This was also at the conclusion of this training on June 28th. There, to your knowledge, there was some discussion about either you're down or you're not, right? Either you're down with this group or you're not, correct?
Yes, there was an ultimatum at the beginning.
Not made by Mr. Bellar, correct?
Correct.
It was made by somebody else, the ultimatum, correct?
Made by Mr.
The
Musico.
ultimatum was, if you're down with this, you're here. If you're not, you're gone, right?
Correct.
Mr. Beller's gone, right? Let me rephrase that. After that training on June 28th, Mr. Beller leaves the group, correct?
Well, he left the state. He remained part of the QRF chat.
Well, we'll get to that in a little bit.
I do think it's accurate to say he left the Watchman.
Okay. And Dan knew, obviously, that Doc left the Watchman, right, on June 28th?
Right around that time frame, Dan knew. He reported it to the FBI.
And Mr. Ballard asked you some questions yesterday about all of the reports that were compiled, like 400 of them, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you weren't the only agent that worked on this case, correct?
That's correct.
There was another agent, Agent Chambers, correct?
Agent Chambers was
Just one of them.
one of them.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you guys worked together though, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is it fair to say you were the lead investigator in this case?
We had different roles. So certainly I was the lead in certain portions, and Jason, Mr. Chambers, Agent Chambers was the lead in other portions.
You assisted the prosecuting attorney with getting this case together for trial, right?
Yes, sir.
So, and you were privy to all the discovery in this case, and by that I mean police reports, audios, videos, text messages, correct?
I was responsible for collecting it and making sure that the defense team himself, that you guys got all the discovery. I certainly could have accessed any of that discovery myself, and I tried to access as much as I could.
Were you made aware of the text messages that Dan made to his FBI handler while you to Agent Chambers? Were you made aware of the text messages that were made on June 29th, the day after this training?
I did become aware of them during discovery.
May I approach?
Yes.
Showing you defendant's proposed exhibit BB1. I'm sorry, Judge, Your Honor, I didn't put this on.
Yeah, I have, it. Thank you.
Mr. Kirkpatrick, can I say this for a second?
Sure. I didn't slide in there, I promise. Great,
Can you
thanks.
staple those together?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Go ahead. I think, can you staple these?
Absolutely.
I-
You can do that.
Agent Empla, could you take a second and familiarize yourself with those?
Yes,
Recognize those documents?
I do.
Those are actual text messages that occurred during the course of this investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Those are actual text messages that occurred between your informant, Dan, and Agent Chambers, whom you worked with in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they're fair and accurate, correct?
Each individual text message, I think, is accurate.
Your Honor, I move for admission of defendant's exhibit BBB 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Any objection?
I just have 1 second.
Yeah.
Could we just approach Judge for a second?
No, no.
Yes. so-
made his intentions known that he was leaving the Wolverine Watchman, correct?
Yes.
And that's first text message is a text message from your informant to Agent Chambers, correct?
Yes.
Please read that to the jury.
Doc left, starting his own group.
Read the next one.
So this is from June 29th. It's from CHS Dan to Special Agent Chambers, and the question is, have him get with Adam.
Dan is asking your partner, Agent Chambers, have him get with Adam, right?
Yes, sir.
You would agree that that's Adam Fox, right?
Yes.
So right now, what's going on is the informant for the FBI is asking his FBI handler, should I get Paul with Adam after he's made it clear he's left the Wolverine Watchman, correct?
I think it's accurate.
That's fair?
Yes.
Please read the next one. And
Uh,
who it's from,
Sure.
and who it's to.
So this is from Special Agent Chambers to CHS Dan, and the response is good idea.
Good idea. Good idea to get Mr. Beller, who just made it clear he's leaving the Wolverine Watchman, to get him with Adam, right?
Yes,
That's
sir.
what we're talking about here, correct?
Yes.
There's one more.
So this is a few hours later on the 29th of June. It's from Special Agent Chambers to CHS Dan, and the response is, look at you bringing people together.
So the FBI agent, Mr. Chambers, and I'll concede that there's a couple text messages in between there, and they talk about how's Joe feel about this, and there's a little discussion about Paul having an issue with bringing his girlfriend. There's a couple little text messages, and you agree with that, right?
Yeah, there's more text there.
I'm not done with that. exhibit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Last page, please.
Oh,
Look at you bringing people together, right?
that's what it says here.
That's what your partner, a FBI agent, says to an informant after someone has made it clear they're leaving a group, correct?
Yes, sir.
Oh. At the conclusion, I got to go back to June 28th, training June 28th. At the conclusion of that training, before Paul says he's leaving the group, there was also discussion of this 3 plan, correct? If you don't recall.
Yeah,
But-
but no, yes, sir. There was discussion of the 3 plan.
That wasn't brought up by my client, correct?
That's correct.
Who brought that up?
Pete used to go.
Okay. So on June 28th, to make sure we're clear, June 28th, that was an ultimatum training. You're either in or you're out, correct?
Correct.
And at the conclusion of that training, the 3 plan was brought up, correct?
It was brought up during the training.
Okay.
Yes.
And that was 3 o'clock in the morning, grabbing politicians, something along those lines. Is that fair?
Yeah, snatch and grab.
Thanks. So now we can fast forward to July 7th, which is the formation of Paul's group. So on July 7th, Paul has a meeting with a group that he's creating, correct?
Yes.
This is the one that you've been classifying all along as this ghost group, correct?
Yes, sir.
This fly under the radar strike group, right?
It's a ghost group.
QRF, quick reaction for us, right?
Yes. Yes.
At this meeting at Paul's house, Joe's not there, right?
That's correct.
Pete's not there, right?
That's correct.
Adam Fox is not there, right?
That's correct.
Barry Croft's not there, correct?
Correct.
And at this particular moment in time, and I'm talking July 7th, you have no information whatsoever that Mr. Beller directly communicated with Barry Croft, correct?
Correct.
Did you put up exhibit 153, please? Oh, I'm sorry, strike, yeah, 153. Played an audio where Paul, at this meeting on July 7th, where Paul had reached out to Adam Fox, correct?
There's a reference to that. I recall that.
That's exhibit 153, right?
Yes.
Okay. And it says, yeah, I just reached out to Paul because Tats reached out to me and told me that Adam and Joe had a conversation. Joe brought up the fact that I left and Adam thought I was no longer part of the movement. Who's Adam? Adam. Yes, Adam. Right?
Yes.
Then shortly after that, you put up an exhibit.
Mr. Kirkpatrick, just for the record, who's Tats?
Tats is Brandon Concerta, correct?
Yes, sir. That is Brandon Caserta.
Could you put up 164, please? .164 is the actual communication that Mr. Beller had with Adam Fox. Is that a fair statement?
It certainly is a communication from the same day. I can't tell you if that's what Mr. Bellar was referring to when he made that statement, but it's a direct communication.
That's fair.
Same day.
That's fair. So the same day of his meeting, he sends a message to Adam saying that he's starting his own group, correct?
I'm just trying to read it to see if that's what he.
No, that's fine. Take your time.
Yes, he does say he's going to start his own group.
And throughout this whole trial, we've been shown numerous exhibits, correct?
Yes.
We've been shown numerous messages, correct?
Yes.
And you would agree with me that every exhibit that's been shown and every message that's been shown, could you zoom out, please? Every message that's been shown, because this is going to be important a little bit, to this jury, clearly when you printed it, you didn't have a black box around it, correct?
Correct. I added those black boxes.
Perfect. And you added those because you knew that's what you were going to present to the jury, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that that's what you wanted to click on, correct?
That's what we're trying to highlight. It's
Right.
a reminder to aid in the testimony.
Perfect. He starts this message out with Adam Fox. Hey, sir. Hey, sir. He doesn't start out with, hey, buddy. Hey, pal. Hey, homie. Hey, friend, right?
Correct.
Hey, sir. It's Doc, parentheses, ex admin of the Wolverine Watchman, correct?
Yes.
He is reminding Adam Fox of who in fact he really is, right?
Yes.
That's because up to this point, he met him on June 18th at a rally, a protest. He met him on June 20th at the Vac Shack, and he met him at one training on June 28th in Munich, correct?
Everything you said is accurate. I can't say that that's the reason why you typed that, but
That's fair. That's for the jury to decide. You would agree with that. I mean, that's something for them to talk about and digest, correct?
correct.
At the beginning of this meeting, Paul well, not the beginning. This meeting starts and we go probably 20, I'd say 20 or so minutes into this meeting before they start talking about a mission statement.
I'm sorry, the ghost group meeting?
Yeah, it goes.
I think I made a timeline of it. I don't think it was quite 20 minutes. I think it was more like 5 to 8 minutes.
Even better. So 5 to 8 minutes into this meeting on July 7th, they start talking about the purpose of this group, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's recorded, right?
Yes, it is.
That's recorded by your informant, Dan, who's present at this meeting, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that is also one of the recordings that made it into your ULS, your,
So the Elsher Library of
Elsher,
Electronic
right.
Surveillance Library. Yeah.
that's Discovery, right?
Yes.
That's something that we're entitled to, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're the one that recorded that, correct? Or not you, let me rephrase that. I promise, on these foundational questions, I'm not trying to.
Yeah, no, I got you, Counselor.
This is a recording that Dan received while he was present, correct?
Correct.
And then when he was done with a meeting, he would come to you and he would give you the recording, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you would download it or whatever you did with it into your.
Yep, I download it, put it into evidence.
Okay, so the recording that took place on July 7th, that wouldn't have been doctored by anybody, correct?
Correct.
At this point, I would move to the admission of portion of that training or that meeting. It's the portion is going to be the beginning where they talk about the mission statement, how the mission statement comes about, and it's going to conclude after Dan makes some statements. It's only about, I think it's about
5 minutes, 6 or 7 minutes.
That's right. It is
So some,
3 minutes and 39 seconds.
okay, go ahead.
And that would be, and
Objection.
I'm moving to introduce that as an exhibit, Your Honor.
No objection,
It'll be
Judge.
CCC,
CCC 1, Your Honor.
and it's CCC 1 is admitted.
And also, while we're doing this,
Can you give me a marker for where this CCC is, like a minute marker or anything like that?
yes. Put it out of rooms. Say that. I got the transcript of it.
I just need a minute marker.
Your Honor, I don't have the exact time that it starts. I certainly have a transcript of everything that I'm playing. I'd be happy to give to the prosecutor.
Let her look at it, maybe she can find it somewhere.
There you go.
I'm not gonna have
Any
any idea where it is in an hour
Well,
long recording, Judge, but
I can go play it right now and finding exactly what happens. I think the agent testified that it happens 3 to 4 minutes in. It's not, and they've got a transcript of exactly.
I'm
what-
looking for, he's got an isolated clip. I'm just looking for a minute marker of where that is.
Yeah,
Well, I would need a break then to find that. They do have the transcript and it leads right into their exhibit, which is exhibit 159.
Okay, well, that's helpful.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So hang on. So this is prior to exhibit 159.
This is actually, well, actually it's better. This is the beginning of exhibit 159, just
Okay.
continues to play.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If we could put exhibit 159.
I have no objection, Judge.
Okay, thank you.
okay, wonderful.
Battery, 100%.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Message here. iPhone 5. Connected.
So this is about 5 minutes or so into that July 7th on your timeline. Event number 15. This is about, and I'm not going to hold to it, 5 to 10 minutes into the meeting.
Sure. Yes, it's early on. We've got a timeline of the meeting. So I'm just looking here. Uh,
Three minutes.
So if it's after 159 here,
Actually, it's gonna start with this.
Okay.
It's gonna be pretty much right here. And everything.
Gotcha.
Go through this.
So I think we're at 11 on the timer.
Okay, fair enough.
So that's about it's about half hour, 40 minutes in the meeting.
He's wanting to go, but Jada's not letting him go.
Why he wants to go nuts?
No, like he wants to.
She wanted to go to Ohio. She said fuck. Or no, she wanted to go to Detroit with us. She said fuck no.
Right.
And then he tried going to Ohio. She said fuck.
And there's some shit that's like coming up.
Dan, right here.
All this stuff. Like,
When I play this again, I want you to tell me whether this is Dan or not talking
Okay.
about.
to Ohio, that's what Wisconsin's about. This all day in Ohio.
That's your informant Dan talking to the group, correct?
Yes, that's Dan.
He's talking about Ohio, correct?
Yes.
So there's hitters out there that are putting a call out. Joe couldn't pick up the phone.
Actually, I did want to talk about that. Most of you guys were there. Well, you weren't.
Oh,
You were there. Yeah. You weren't there. What you brought up about?
Not only do I think that.
So, right there, your informant first is talking about Ohio, correct?
But we're just talking about heavy hitters being there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be in relation to the June 6th meeting in Dublin, correct?
Yes, sir.
My client didn't go to that meeting, right?
That's correct.
He's not aware of what was said at that meeting, correct? To your knowledge.
I can't tell you what he's aware of.
You have no evidence to support that he was made aware of that, correct?
I have
Knew what was
some
talked about.
evidence, but that he's aware.
I just don't think that. I'll tell you guys where I talked to Joe about this right after that. I know you guys told me like, hey, you're in your house, but I told her outside. I'll tell you guys right now. I'm not. I know that. But I'm not getting that right now. I'll tell you that right. Well, yeah. I joined this shit to try to train up so that I can be of use to defend myself, my country, my fellow.
We're all on the same page, like, hopefully we do not ever have to actually point our guns at another.
Mission statement off the group.
So they're talking about what was talked about at the training, Pete's plan. There's another individual, I think you mentioned his name, he was talking about I'm training now if I'm not.
So that's Jared Buchesney, another member of the Watchmen, said he's there to train. He's not there to
Okay.
black bag politicians or something.
So they're having a conversation about, they're discussing what this group is about, correct? This new group on July 7th. correct?
Yes, yes,
Coming
absolutely.
up next is my client, right?
Yes, sir.
Right now, I'm not an aggressor. To try to up so that I can be of use to defend myself, my country, my fellow.
We're all on the same page, like, hopefully we do not ever have to actually point our guns at another.
Mission statement off the group I'm trying to create right now. I'm not an aggressor. This will not be an aggressor. Okay. I'm going with strictly defending, and that is it. It will not be, drawing our fucking teeth, not be flashing our guns at capitals. We're gonna be strictly down low, waiting for shit that's actually possible. Point where we go, all right, we need to protect these people. We need to protect this. We gotta defend the Constitution for this. We need to fight back on this. We're not gonna be fucking black bag, fucking politicians out of their cars, getting fucking warrants, going arrest them. We're not dealing with that. Because we already know the fucking system's great. Yep. No matter what you do, whatever the fuck you want to do, you didn't do it the legal way. They're gonna find a way to fuck around it.
Yeah.
And that's where I was at.
So where do we draw that line? When do we start?
Well, that would be an open discussion. Like I said, that's why I said this is a nice.
Well, that's.
Just remember
the revolution and what we want.
Right, yeah.
We don't know.
Did you ever watch the young men that 100%? I love the answer to what.
So like Wisconsin is, I don't know what all went on in Ohio, but there was basically put out some feelers about. That's the interpretation of the offensive. Basically, that's what I was kind of getting by about it. For these guys going out and just getting ideas for the what if kind of thing. So Wisconsin is gonna be like mountain training there, so like live fire capabilities. I don't know who's all going. I know there's a few states involved. I mean, out of here, I'm going.
Right.
Adam's going. My brothers are going.
They're going.
Right.
So he says right there, he's talking about after this group has made it clear that they're defensive, they're not offensive, right? You heard him say that, correct? And a mission statement, you would agree with me, the FBI has a mission statement, right?
Yes,
Military has mission statements, correct?
I believe so, yes,
And a mission statement is what are we about? What is our objective here, right?
yes,
And in that audio, Mr. Beller makes it clear as day that he is not going to be the aggressor in the state of Michigan, correct?
that's his words.
And that's all we're talking about here. I get it. Now, let me rephrase it then with just his words. Just his words. He says we are defensive, not offensive. Just his word, right?
Yes,
Just his words. He says we're not about fucking black bagging politicians, correct?
correct,
Just his words that they're going to train up in case they have to defend themselves or defend someone else or defend the Constitution, correct?
correct.
After informant Dan hears all this, he doesn't say, wait a minute. I'm working for the FBI right now. I have rules that I have to follow, right? He's got rules, right? Dan does.
Yes, he does.
In fact, you testified before this jury. The rules are he can't encourage, correct?
I think that's fair. Yeah, he was not supposed to be coming up with ideas.
Correct. He's not supposed to come up with ideas, right?
Correct,
He's not supposed to entice people, correct, into doing things, correct?
correct,
He's not supposed to encourage people into doing things, correct?
correct. I mean, we wanted him to de-escalate the situation, so that's part of enticing or encouraging, so.
Absolutely. So I'm not talking about he can't get involved if something dangerous is going on. He's got to de-escalate it, correct?
Correct,
What I'm talking about is when you testified to this jury about what is an informant's duties, and they are not allowed to encourage, correct?
so we don't want Dan to push any attack plans or violence.
After he hears the mission statement of the new group that Mr. Beller has created on July 7th, you're with me, right? You agree with that, correct?
Yes, yes, sir,
He sends text messages to the handler, Agent Chambers, correct, on June 29th.
well, all those text messages occurred before this meeting.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Those text messages occurred on June 29th, the day after he said, I am leaving the Watchman, right?
That's correct,
The day after he heard about them talking about the 3 plan, right?
yes,
The day after he heard it, you're either down with this or you're not, correct?
yes,
And he's leaving, right?
what he said,
The text message that Dan sends says, get him with Adam, right? He asked, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. He asked, should I get him with Adam?
yes,
Your handler's response is, good idea, right?
yes,
So now we're at this meeting on July 7th, right? Where he's creating this new group, correct? He's made it clear what his mission statement is, right?
Mr.
Mr. Beller has, he's made it clear what his mission statement is, correct?
Yes, sir,
And so your informant doesn't just take a step back and say, wow, you know what? Maybe I ought to just see where this goes. Maybe I ought to see where we go with this. He starts talking about Wisconsin, correct?
yes,
Now, you knew, your handler knew, and Dan knew, based upon the meeting on June 6th in Dublin, who was going to be going to this training in Wisconsin, correct? Or at least had an idea. You may not have known everybody, but you knew, as he said in there was some heavy hitters going, correct?
yes, that's fair.
And again, this is a meeting Paul's not at, right?
Paul's not at the Dublin
Dublin
meeting.
meeting, correct.
That's correct,
And you testified regarding the training in Wisconsin. That was put on by the Wisconsin 3%ers, correct?
correct.
And you classified it as an annual training, correct?
To my knowledge, yes,
Yeah, annual training where they get together and they train, correct?
yes.
And in fact, there was barbecues going on, right?
There certainly was food at the training. It was a 2-day event.
Right, there's kids there, correct?
There were some kids.
Paul's not involved in the meeting on June 6th in Dublin, correct?
That's correct.
And so Paul does go to the group, right?
Paul goes to Cambria, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
If that's what you mean.
Yeah, he goes to that.
Yes.
Actually, could you bring up exhibit 157? We're still on the July 7th meeting, okay? I'm trying not to bounce around. July 7th meeting. After all this stuff is said, after there's discussions of Dan talking about going to Ohio, when he says in there, going to Ohio, and he says, I'm going, Adam's going, the Knoll brothers are going, correct? That's what he says about who's going.
CHS Dan makes that statement.
Correct.
Yes,
And Paul's sitting right there in this meeting, correct?
yes.
You brought this up because at the conclusion of this meeting, or at some point during this meeting on July 7th, they talked about where we could go strategically in case the feds show up or in case we have issues with individuals with this group, which we don't know, correct?
Well, I don't make the decisions on what gets brought in. That's a
Right.
prosecution decision. But I agree that during this meeting, after the ghost group meeting was done, there was discussion about Wisconsin and about a fallback plan.
Right, fallback plan.
Yes,
And you presented this to the jury, and it says, it starts off with, if it's true QRF, like, no shit, fucking like, we're having a standoff, it's a Ruby Ridge situation. You presented that to the jury, correct? This was presented, or I'm sorry, the prosecutor.
I testified about this
You
exhibit.
testified.
This is Exhibit 157.
And this is to show, hey, we might get in a shootout with the FBI if they roll in and try to arrest us. Does that sound about right?
Well, I don't get to make decisions about what and why they're being shown, but I think that's a fair assessment of what's going on here.
Do you know what Ruby Ridge is?
I do.
You're aware that Ruby Ridge was an incident where innocent people were killed by FBI agents, correct?
Yes,
Where a mother was killed by an FBI agent unarmed, correct?
correct.
Where a 14-year-old child was killed by an FBI agent unarmed, correct?
I believe he was armed.
Okay. But no one was ever found guilty of any wrongdoing except the FBI and Ruby Ridge, correct?
I'm not disputing that. I just don't know the outcome of all the court cases.
Well, they ended up getting about a $3.1 million lawsuit against them as a result of their actions in Ruby Ridge. You aware of that?
I'm aware that Ruby Ridge was certainly not a good situation for law enforcement.
And that's what they're talking about when they go to Wisconsin, correct? Ruby Ridge, right?
Yes,
Put up Exhibit 181, please. One minute, Your Honor.
Good.
These are the code words that Mr. Beller discussed at this July 7th group formation, correct?
yes,
This is the code words that you testified to regarding how Mr. Beller wanted to go stealth or use code words. Does that sound about right?
I mean, we played the exhibits about the statements from the ghost group, and then this is a notebook that was found in his apartment after he left the state.
These code words were never used in this case, correct?
No, they were used.
They were used. You sure of that?
Yeah, we read them off other exhibits. The word bonfire was used. They
Were
changed
they
the
used
name
by
of the
Adam
chapter.
Fox?
No, I don't believe Adam Fox was aware of these code words.
Again, do you recall testifying at preliminary exam?
Generally speaking, yes.
Still got that transcript in front of you?
I have a transcript there.
Perfect. Again, I'm going to go back to the preliminary exam. That again was held on March 3rd of 2021. If you could please go to page 264 for me. And we're going to start with line 2, much like before. And again, I'll give you a minute to get there. Wait. 264, we're going to start on line 2. with me?
Yes,
Okay. So this is, again, sworn testimony in district court, it's probable cause hearing, correct?
correct.
You're under oath, much as you are today, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to start with line 2. I'm going to ask the question again, and I would ask that you please give me the answer you gave at that preliminary exam. Question to you was, and is it a fair statement that the terminology that was brought to them was not used during their further trainings after Mr. Beller left? And we're talking in this context regarding these code words, correct? And if you need a minute to look at it, I'm fine with you taking a look at it to confirm that.
Judge, I'm sorry, that's not inconsistent.
Well, let me ask him a different question. I'm sorry. Are
Okay,
there any other code
Another
words?
question then.
thank you.
Are there any other code words that you brought to this jury's attention that my client created?
No, sir.
Any other specific, well, any other specific sheets of words that my client brought to this group, or Adam Fox or anyone else?
No,
Just this one, right?
yes.
Okay, let's go forward then. Question. And is it a fair statement that the terminology that was brought to them was not used during their further trainings after Mr. Beller left? Please read your answer for me.
I'm sorry, which terminology are you talking about?
Question. They had a meeting on July 7th. Your answer?
That's correct.
Question. Where he had come up with some terminology of things. The group didn't continue to use that terminology after he had left, correct? Answer.
I think the group, they never really used the terminology very much.
Thank you. So we go to Wisconsin. Paul goes to Wisconsin. The FBI rents a Suburban for Dan, correct?
Dan rented a Suburban and got reimbursed, but
Okay.
I think I'm not trying to,
Right.
that's accurate, generally speaking.
Dan goes, rents a Suburban, FBI reimburses him for the renting of the Suburban. Is that a
That's
fair
correct.
statement?
Yes,
And in that Suburban, Mr. Beller is transported to Wisconsin, correct?
yes.
Mr. Beller has no money, right?
I don't know about his financial situation, but I think it's fair to say that he certainly didn't have a lot of money.
Okay. Is it fair to say that your informant also paid for the majority of his meals?
He certainly bought him McDonald's on at least one occasion. I don't know about the majority of his meals. I know there was food, at the training.
He contributed to his lodging, correct?
No, from my understanding, Ty Garbin paid for the lodging.
So Dan would be a better witness then to discuss what he actually paid for and what he didn't. Does that sound fair?
I can't speculate as to who's better witnesses, but I have some knowledge. Dan actually participated.
Participated in paying for things, correct?
He was the one who was physically there, and then I live monitored.
You would agree with me that when he goes to this training again, he's never met Barry Croft, correct?
That's correct.
He doesn't travel there with Adam Fox, correct?
That's correct.
He, meaning Paul, doesn't instant message or actually tell Adam Fox personally he's going to Wisconsin for training, correct?
We didn't have access to his encrypted communication, so I can't tell you what Paul Bellar
You didn't have
said
access to Adam Fox's?
to Adam Fox's or to Paul Bellar's.
You didn't have access to Mr. Bellar's messages?
To his encrypted communications. So we only have what Dan can see through the Wolverine Watchman or through a group chat.
Okay.
So I can't testify about direct communications, if they exist, directly between subjects.
It's put on by the Wisconsin 3%ers, correct?
Yes,
And Adam Fox classified himself as a Michigan 3%er, correct?
I didn't hear him use the term. He certainly, by this time, there was a Facebook group the Michigan Patriot 3%ers.
Mhm.
That Adam Fox was leading that page.
Okay.
When he came, I believe he represented himself as being from Michigan with his guys. So there was two groups of guys from Michigan. There was the Wolverine Watchman and there was Adam Fox's guys.
Could you please put up exhibit 99? Remember showing that to the jury?
Yes, sir.
Guy on the right, that's Barry Croft, right?
Yes, sir.
Guy on the left's Adam Fox, right?
Yes.
What are they holding up in their hands?
They're holding up the 3% sign.
3% sign.
Yes,
So Adam Fox is a 3%er, Barry Croft is a 3%er, correct?
correct.
The same group that Mr. Beller refused to take an oath to back on June 28th when he left the Wolverine Watchman, correct?
Well, being a 3%er is not a group, it's an ideology.
Well, sir, but here's the thing. Let me rephrase it for you. He refused to swear in to Adam Fox's 3%er ideology group, correct?
I agree that Mr. Bellar did not swear in when Adam Fox asked him to.
Thank you.
Sorry.
At this training, well, let me ask you this. In all those stacks of exhibits, you got any pictures of my client with Barry Croft? Hanging out like that?
Not like this. There's a bunch of pictures of Wisconsin. That's
Training.
all I'm thinking of.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. That's fair. So Mr. Beller's at Wisconsin and Mr. Croft is at Wisconsin, correct?
That's correct.
So there may be some pictures of when they're doing their training where they might both be in the same photo. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
You don't have a picture like this, though, where they're
That's
hugging each other, correct?
I don't have a picture like this.
You don't have a picture of my client hugging Adam Fox like this, do you?
No.
Could you put up 10 for me, please? This is an exhibit that you presented to the jury regarding the timelines of communication between Pete Musico and Adam Fox, Pete Musico and Barry Croft, Joe Morrison and Barry Croft, Joe Morrison and Pete Musico, correct?
Yes, sir.
Find me the exhibit in there where you have something like this for my client, Mr. Beller.
I don't have that.
At this training in Wisconsin, Paul engages in a small portion of the medical training, correct? You agree with that?
I know he engaged in medical training. I know it wasn't all of the medical training.
Right.
I can't tell you specifically what he did and how much it was.
Okay. And I think a clip was played at that training where Paul, it's 264. Could you please bring up 264? Going off memory. It is the right. This is what was played to the jury regarding Mr. Beller's medical part of his medical training in Wisconsin, correct?
I think this is discussion amongst, let's see here. Yes, I think that's fair.
And to be fair, Mr. Beller is talking to a group of people, right?
That's what I took out of it, out of the context of the
You
conversation.
can hear him in the background, right?
Yes, yes.
And he's talking to a group of people in that first paragraph that he says, correct?
It seems accurate. I wasn't there, so I can't
Yeah, okay.
testify about
But-
what happened. but it's a fair statement. That's what I believe to be happening.
And Mr. Beller down here says your medic is going to be your doc when stuff hits the fan, right? Mr. Beller says that.
Yes,
And then CHS, Mr. Stan says you are allergic to penicillin and Fox is amoxicillin and penicillin. That's a conversation just between Dan and Adam. He's not having that conversation with Mr. Beller, correct?
so based on this context and how it flows, I would have to be in the room to testify about that.
Could we play the video that goes along with this exhibit, please?
The audio.
I'm sorry, the audio, yes.
I got one thing to add. Those of you that are gonna be, out and about with your medic, please get in touch with your medic. I know it's, right now. So, good promise, get in touch with these guys, let them know what medical conditions you have, basically anything and everything that you're comfortable with, if you go down. They gotta know where your kid is, they gotta know where your.
Anybody with penicillin?
Get that burning cessation. Yeah.
Yeah, identify that.
Your medic is gonna be.
You're like.
Now that you've heard it, it's clear that Mr. Beller is speaking to a group of people, correct?
I think that's accurate.
It's also clear that that little conversation at the end attributed to Mr. Fox is a conversation going on between your informant and Mr. Fox, not part of the classroom instruction of Mr. Beller. Fair?
It's certainly crosstalk. That's what I'd call it.
Right.
And I agree that CHS Dan made the statement and Fox made the statement. I believe there's a lot of crosstalk that kind of happens at the end.
Crosstalk is Mr. Beller's addressing the group while the crosstalk is going on. Fair?
I don't disagree with that. That
Thank you.
seems fair.
Maybe approach.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just get to Wisconsin.
Okay.
Wisconsin training, they bring up explosives, right?
Yes,
They bring out explosives, correct?
yes.
Mr. Beller is not involved in any of those explosives, correct?
He didn't build them. He didn't participate in the explosive testing,
Right.
to my knowledge.
He was actually in a vehicle with your informant because he was scared to death of him, right?
I did hear him say that he was scared, and I know I could hear like a vehicle door shutting.
Okay,
So.
but you weren't there, so you're just going off the audio.
Yeah, so I think
That's
that's
fair.
accurate.
He also was very upset and concerned because there were children around while they were playing with these explosives, correct? He had that conversation with your informant, right?
Made a statement about there being children around before he went and went into the Suburban.
Okay. It's not his training, right?
That's correct.
He's in a different state. He's not putting this training on, right?
Well, initially, it wasn't his training. And then it's a Wisconsin 3%er training before he started helping out.
Helping out. There's a little bit of medical training, right?
Yes, sir.
All the trainings. One second. Just want to make sure I don't mischaracterize. All of these trainings in Wisconsin that Mr. Beller partook in. In fact, in all of his trainings. These kill houses you're talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
They're put together with plywood and tires, correct?
It's very rudimentary.
Not one of those was ever put in a shape or a design of the Capitol or Governor Whitmer's, any place she may be, that Mr. Beller was involved in, correct?
I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Could I just ask for a rephrasing of the question?
Sure.
I don't understand much.
Kill houses, plywood, old tires, right?
Correct.
in every training that Mr. Bellar participated in, including Wisconsin, none of those kill houses were ever set up as a design, the actual design of the Capitol, correct?
I don't know what they were set up for, and I don't know the intentions, but I agree. When I looked at the keel house, I didn't say that looks like the Capitol. It's just a basic hallway, basic doors. I have no knowledge of the intention of what they were trying to simulate when they set it up.
Well, I think you answered my question already then. Basic layout, basic stuff, correct?
They're very rudimentary.
And at this time, there isn't even a plot to kidnap the governor of Michigan, correct? There's no plan in place with Adam Fox, correct?
Well, Adam Fox and Barry Croft were discussing kidnapping the governor.
Adam Fox and Barry Croft,
Objection,
correct?
Judge, if he could finish his answer,
Sure,
please.
sorry.
Go ahead and finish if you want to add anything.
So I believe the plot was on the table. I believe the plan was in place and had not yet been refined.
For Barry, Adam, right?
Well, various members had very different knowledge of the plan, but certainly Barry and Adam, Mr. Croft and Mr. Fox were the leaders of the plan. And they had told different people different things, and different people had different amounts of awareness throughout the entire case.
Agent Impolite, when we first started this morning, I told you that I don't care about anybody else but Mr. Bellar, right? We had that discussion, right?
Yes.
So when you're saying we and all these other things, why don't you tell me that story again, wherever Mr. Bellar was involved in Wisconsin?
Okay. So in Wisconsin, there was discussion amongst the participants. It was open discussion, and Barry Croft held court, so to speak, about kidnapping Governor Whitmer. But I do not know where Paul Bellar was standing when that discussion was occurring.
So could you go to page 193 for me? Again, we're talking about the preliminary exam when you testified under oath. 193 of the transcript.
Oh.
We're going to go to page 193 of the preliminary transcript where you testified back on in March of 2021 under oath. And I want you to go to line 20 for me, would you please? 193. And in fact, this is the prosecuting attorney asking you a question. You see right above, so on line 19, it says by Ms. Datamani, is that correct?
Yes,
So I'm not the one asking you this question, correct?
that's correct.
So the question, I'm going to read the question again, and I'm going to ask that you please read the answer. So we're starting with line 20. Question. Okay. So let's talk about during this training in Wisconsin, was attack planning discussed, and was Paul Bellar any part of that? Give me your answer.
So attack planning was discussed, and yes, Paul Bellar was present, but he didn't contribute significantly to any particular expertise in the plan.
He didn't contribute, right? That's what you said,
Judge,
Yes.
correct?
Judge, I'm gonna check that. That was like,
I'll withdraw the question.
it's not inconsistent.
I'll withdraw it.
I'm not sure what your objection is.
I'm objecting to the, you know what, Judge, I'll withdraw. It's fine.
I'll move on.
Go ahead.
Bring up exhibit 164 for me again, please. We're gonna go back to this Facebook message. We just showed the jury a few minutes ago, right before the July 7th meeting at Mr. Bellar's house. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
And that's up here, right? Correct?
Yes,
And we talked about what's outlined in black, correct?
correct.
And that's what you presented to the jury, correct?
Well, the whole page, this is
Right.
an exhibit, but yes, that was the point that I was trying to recall.
You would agree there's more to this, correct?
Yes.
You could go, see, I want to talk about what's not in the block. I want to talk about right below the block. See the author, Paul Zacharias, Facebook, and it says sent 27/13, so July 13th of 2020. You would agree with me, correct?
Yes,
This is a message to Adam Fox from Mr. Beller, correct?
that's correct.
And tell me what the title of that message is.
The body of the message, you want me to,
Right here. I'm sorry, I don't have a pointer.
oh,
Tell
I
me
see.
what the title of that message is.
Yes, I see that. It says Dan Abbott, Van Buren County Sheriff.
Yeah. Do you know who Dan Abbott is?
Van Buren County Sheriff.
Were you aware that on July 11th, Dan Abbott said he's not enforcing any of the governor's orders?
I was not aware of that.
So you weren't aware that he was one of those sheriff, you were aware that sheriffs during that time period were saying, there might be a mask mandate, but I'm not enforcing it,
Yes,
correct?
I'm generally aware of that. I
Okay.
just didn't know that Dan Abbott was one of those.
Now, this is what does Paul actually say after he has title? I'm going to go to the second paragraph from the bottom. What does Paul say to Adam?
Paul tells Adam, there's the sheriff that we should have someone reach out to.
What's Adam Fox's response?
Yes, sir, I'm getting on it this week.
So, Mr. Beller doesn't significantly or engage in any of these talks about kidnapping the governor, correct?
Correct.
There's no plan or plot in place on July 13th to kidnap the governor, correct? Let me rephrase that. That my client is.
Okay, gotcha. I don't have any specific knowledge about your client's involvement in the plot to
Thank
kidnap
you.
the governor on that day.
You would agree with me that this is the last communication that you are aware of. I get what you said a minute ago. I can't monitor his chats or this, that, or the other thing. But you agree with me that this is the last communication where you can show Mr. Beller directly communicating with Adam Fox, correct?
Yes, sir.
This is July 13th. It's after the training in Wisconsin, right?
Yes, sir.
Does he say, hey, bro, what's up? Does he say that?
No, he does not.
Hey, buddy, how's it going? Does he say that?
No,
Hey, homie, what a great training session we had in Wisconsin. Does he say that?
does not say those.
Hey, we got to start working on kidnapping the governor. Does he say that?
No.
He says, here's that sheriff I told you about, right?
Correct.
Let's go back to June 20th at the back shack. Remember June 20th?
I do.
Remember how hard it was for me to get out of you citizen's arrest or a real arrest? Remember what happened?
Objection.
It's cross-examination, Your Honor.
Argumentative with the witness, judge.
Go ahead.
I'll rephrase.
Yeah.
You call us, you call me, plan the video for June 20th.
Yes, I do.
You call us. Well, let me go farther back than that. Do you recall the Friday before I played that video when you were being when you were being direct examined by the prosecutor? Do you recall the prosecutor making a big issue out of it was a citizen's arrest? Recall that?
Yes.
After listening to that video or that audio, you agreed with me that it was not a citizen's arrest, correct?
Correct.
You agreed with me that the discussion on June 20th in the back shack was, let's get a conservative judge from a small town, or a conservative police officer, sheriff, whatever, from a small town, and a conservative judge to get an arrest warrant, correct?
Yes.
And this is an individual, this judge, I guess, you don't know whether or not Dan Abbott, sheriff from Van Buren County, went out on July 11th and said, I'm not enforcing these mask mandates. You don't know that, correct?
I don't. I'm not contesting it.
But the only discussion he has with Adam Fox is, here's the sheriff we should reach out to, right?
I can't tell you if that's the only discussion, but that's the only records we have. I don't know about direct communications that are encrypted, as we talked about. I agree. The only communications the FBI has on Facebook are what we're talking about here.
I'm gonna be getting into some new stuff, so maybe.
Sounds good. Hey, we'll see everybody back in about 15 minutes.
All rise to adjourn.
Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Epple, before the break, I asked you a question about whether or not you had any knowledge of my client drawing up any plans of the Capitol or Governor Whitmer's residence or her cat cottage up north. You recall me asking that?
I don't recall you.
I'm sorry, I asked you if you recalled my client ever drawing up any plans of the Capitol, I think, or the governor's. Like, you recall me when we were talking about the plywood and the tires?
Yeah, I remember the kill house, and I think it was just, I thought it was not specific to your client. I thought it was just the arrangement to the kill house. But
Okay.
I recall that line of question.
You also testified that you can't really say what it was, right?
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes,
there's no way for you to determine that, correct?
correct.
You recall testifying at preliminary exam back on March 3rd, 2021?
I don't recall, but I'm sure you'll remind me.
The same thing we've been going through. So this is the probable cause hearing where you're under oath, you're testifying. If you could go to page 221. We're going to start on line 24. We're going to go into page 222. And like before, I'm going to ask the question and I would ask for you just to give me the answer. Would that be okay?
Sure, let me read the
Yeah,
context here.
Sure.
221.
221, I'm starting on page 24, but go ahead, let me know when you're ready.
Yes, I'm ready.
Starts off, my question. You talked about, strike that, you never recovered or your informant never told you that any of these three, well, specifically my client, had drawn up any plans of the state capitol, correct? And what I mean by that is entryway, where the rooms are, how to maneuver through the capitol. You were not made aware of my client ever drawing up any type of plan for the capitol, correct? Your answer?
I'm sorry, I think I'm on the wrong page.
Oh, 221 to 222?
Okay, and then what, I'm sorry, what line?
No, it's fine, it's fine. I'm starting on line 24 of 221.
Oh, okay, yes, okay, I'm trying.
But with you, does it start off, you talked about?
Yes,
Okay, perfect. So we'll start over. The question I asked you was, you talked about, strike that, you never recovered or your informant never told you that any of these three, well, specifically my client, had drawn up any plans of the state capitol, correct? And what I mean by that is entryway, where the rooms are, how to maneuver throughout the capitol. You were not made aware of my client ever drawing up any type of plan for the capitol, correct? And your answer?
that's correct.
Next question. You were also never aware of my client drawing up any plans or maps of Governor Whitmer's residence, correct? Your answer.
That's correct.
Question. Or Governor Whitmer's up north cottages, correct?
That is correct.
And those were your answers.
Yes.
Now we can move on to July 26th, which is event number 20 for you. Well, event 18 is Peebles, Ohio, right? That happens on July 18th.
Yes, sir.
My client doesn't go, correct?
That is correct.
Next training is on July 26th in Fowlerville, is that correct? I'm sorry, not the next one. Let me rephrase that. That was an unfair question. Event number 20 is the training on July 26th in Fowlerville, correct?
That's correct.
My client attends that training, correct?
Yes,
Joe Morrison does not, correct?
that's correct.
Pete Musico does not, correct?
That is correct.
Adam Fox does not, correct?
That is correct.
Barry Croft does not, correct?
Correct.
You showed a video of the jury regarding training from that day. Exhibit 174 and 175. And those exhibits were training that was done in a blue PT Cruiser. You recall that video?
I do.
You testified to this jury that that was offensive in nature. Is that correct?
That's my opinion.
Your opinion.
Yes.
Your opinion is offensive, correct?
Yes.
Could we please play exhibit, exhibit 174, please? Keep moving. That in the video with him?
That's Brandon Caserta was in the passenger side and Paul Bellar was in the driver's
So
side.
Brandon Concerta is in the vehicle and it's my client, Mr. Beller, correct?
Yes, sir.
You would agree with me, and we're just relying on the video right now. I'm not even gonna ask you anything other than just the video. That they open the door, they fire, correct? They get out of the vehicle, they fire, correct?
Correct.
And then they're given an instruction to keep moving. You recall that?
I did hear that.
And they don't move forward, they move backward behind their vehicle. You would agree with me, right?
Yes.
So when they say keep moving, they're not going forward like this, shooting their weapons, correct?
Correct.
They're backing up, going behind a position of cover and firing their weapon. Fair?
Yes, that's fair.
At this training to the code words from July 7th, I think you testified to, I could be wrong, were passed out then, correct?
Yes.
And those were the code words that you testified through the exam transcript that you read that were never even really used, correct?
Just so the record's clear, Judge, I think the words were
Terminology.
not very much. Was
Well,
the,
we can go right back to it.
yeah, it's page 264.
Your answer, I think the group, they never really used the terminology very much, right?
Correct.
And that is the code words we're talking about, where he gave those to some members at this training on the 26th, correct?
Yes, they only used them a few times.
And again, Adam Fox isn't there
That's
on
correct.
July 26th.
Correct.
Barry Croft's not there.
That's correct.
Mr. Musical's not there.
Correct.
Mr. Morrison's not there, correct?
That's correct.
So a day after this training, my client sends out a message to the group, right? To his group.
I don't recall the exact message, but I'm sure you'll refresh my memory.
This is the one about him leaving. I'm out of here. That one,
So he discussed that a few times throughout the case.
correct. I'm talking about July 27th.
Okay.
July 27th, Mr. Beller sends out a chat, I believe it was on the bonfire chat. Does that sound about right?
So, yeah, so Bonfire was the QRF chat that he was on.
Okay.
So that's fair.
On July 27th of 2020, Mr. Beller sends out a message, and do you have that message?
I don't have it in front of me, but we
Okay.
collected all the messages.
You testified earlier that you do reports in these cases, right?
Yes, sir.
And the purpose
Source
of,
reports.
yeah, field reports, they're called FD 1023,
Yes,
and those go into the discovery bank, right?
yes, sir.
And the purpose of that is so when you come to court 2 years later, you gotta, you recall things and it's on discovery for the defendants, correct?
Just recording the facts.
Gotcha. May I approach?
Yes.
You recognize this
Can we
document?
see, I'm sorry, can
Oh,
we
I'm
see
sorry.
that before?
his. I'm not gonna introduce it. Look at this one, do you recognize that?
Yes, this is familiar to me.
That's the chat that Mr. Beller sends out on July 27th, telling people that he's leaving the state of Michigan, correct? Go to South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Could you go back through there again and tell me who all is involved in this message with Mr. Beller?
So there's Beaker, which is Dan Harris. There's Gerald, which is Jared Bouchesney. There's Red Hot, which is Kip Franks. Those are the people, it looks like, that immediately responded on these highlighted portions that you have.
So that's who he's talking about when he's telling him that he's leaving the group, right? Those are the ones that he's communicating. Is that fair statement?
Well, I believe that's a statement to the QRF
On this
chat.
one, okay, yeah, the
Yeah,
QRF
and
chat.
they responded directly in that context.
And to be clear, the QRF is what was created on July 7th at his house, right?
So the QRF chat had existed early on with the Wolverine Watchmen.
Right.
And then after the ghost group meeting on July 7th, the QRF chat was relabeled the Bonfire Parties chat, but it's the same chat.
Perfect. And on that bonfire chat, Adam Fox is not in that communication, correct?
Correct, he's not.
Barry Croft is not in that communication, correct?
That's correct.
Joe Morrison's not involved in that communication, correct?
That's correct.
Pete Musico's not involved in that communication, correct?
That's correct.
And in that communication, he tells the group, hey, guys, I'm out of here. I'm paraphrasing.
Generally speaking, yes. He said that he was leaving, he's moving out of state.
Moving back to South Carolina, right?
Yes,
Gonna move in with his dad, correct?
yes,
Gonna get a job, correct?
yes,
Gonna stack up some cash, correct?
yes,
Gonna go back and get his EMS, correct?
correct,
And try to get a job as a firefighter, correct?
correct.
And he leaves the state, right?
Yes,
And again, I asked you, when we started, when he leaves the state, he's not been arrested for anything, correct?
that's correct.
He's not been charged with anything, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, when he leaves the state of Michigan, he never comes back and engages in any training. To your knowledge, in your investigation, he never comes back to the state of Michigan to engage in any training, correct?
That's correct.
He never comes back to the state of Michigan to engage in any of the surveillance and all the other issues going up north, correct?
Correct.
He never comes back to the state of Michigan to engage in any training specific to kidnapping the governor, correct?
That's correct.
Now, we're talking July 27th here. He's made it clear he's going back to South Carolina, and in fact, he did, right?
Yes, sir.
Could you bring up Exhibit 177, please? Remember showing this to the jury,
Yes, sir.
testifying about this?
I do.
Is this just one page?
Yes, sir. I mean, the chat does go on, but the exhibit is just one page.
The exhibit that you wanted the jury to see is just one page, correct?
The exhibit's one page.
Correct. And that's what but you agree with me, there's more to this chat than just this one page, correct?
Yes,
And again, we see these little black boxes, right?
correct.
And we have a black box down here in the left corner that's been, so you know the reference when you're testifying.
Yeah,
correct?
so I made that black box.
Right. There's a black box up here in the corner for reference, correct?
Correct.
This was done on July 27th, correct? Actually,
I believe it was July 29th
Okay.
from my records.
Thank you.
Yep. Look at that and see if you recognize that.
That's no
I'm
problem.
not entering as an exhibit. You agree with me that this is a report, an FD 1023, that was reported on July 29th, correct?
Yes,
Testified to this jury, what day it was, that this chat is connected to Adam Fox, correct? Just fuck around, find out.
well, Adam Fox is Dean Z
Right.
on the chat.
Can we click that up? Can we please click that up?
Zoom in.
Please, yes, thank you. And in fact, you zoomed in on this for this jury, correct? You recall?
Well, my partner,
I'm sorry, your partner zoomed in.
yes, sir.
You testified to this, correct?
I did.
And DZ is Adam Fox, right?
Dean Z, yes.
DZ. And it says, okay, how's everyone feel about kidnapping? Not kids, high profile scum, right?
Correct.
You read that to the jury, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you click on the other box for me, please?
Which part do you want?
I want where it says doc.
Just that?
Yes, please. No, just doc. Well, you can, oh, all the administrators. Then you testified to this jury that Doc was part of the admin group, right?
Correct.
And the reason I would assume, and I'm assuming, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that on July 27th, we still want to keep this connection between Adam Fox and Mr. Bell, is that correct?
I'm just testifying to the exhibits and the facts in the exhibits. I'm not the one who ties them together or makes the argument to the jury. So
You have in front of you right now the report that on July 29th, Adam Fox approved your informant Dan to create a new group, right? It's on the front page.
yes, sir.
And what I'm looking at is I'm looking at, it's right under, pardon my language, ladies and gentlemen, fuck around and find out. It says on July 29th of 2020, this is 2 days after Mr. Beller has made it clear to his group that he's leaving the state, right? Right? Fair?
Yes, fair.
It says Adam Fox approved the idea of creating a new group chat to pursue the plans discussed on July 27th of 2020. Is that what your report says?
It is, yes.
Now, on July 27th of 2020, not only was Mr. Beller sending a message to his group that he's leaving the state for good, your informant Dan had a meeting with Adam Fox on July 7th of 2020, correct?
I believe so, yes.
You recall on July 27th of 2020, your informant Dan has a meeting with Adam Fox. They go get a taco dinner somewhere. They go back to the vac shack and they have a meeting. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, I recall this.
Checked. And at that meeting, Paul's not there, right?
That's correct.
At that meeting, Pete Musical's not there, right?
That's correct.
At that meeting, Joe Morrison's not there, correct?
That's correct.
This meeting occurs on July 27th of 2020, correct?
I believe so. I believe this is my recollection is this is a one-on-one meeting with Adam Fox and CHS Dan.
And listen, I'm not going to hold it to you. There was someone else there. That's not what I'm interested in. So I get that you're going off with what you call. At that meeting, Adam Fox specifically changes what he classifies as his plan from the Capitol. And now he wants to go after the governor, right?
Trying to recall that meeting. I think that's fair. That's a fair assessment.
Perfect. So July 27th is when Adam Fox starts saying, hey, let's switch gears here from the Capitol. Let's look at the governor, right?
Well,
That sound about right?
I think he was always targeting the governor at the Capitol. And so I think he refined his plan to become a little more specific and not do essentially a suicide mission at the Capitol.
There was a conversation, strike that. On July 29th, we just read a minute ago, Adam Fox approved the idea of creating a new group chat to pursue the plans discussed on July 27, 2020. He wasn't in the bonfire chat. Adam Fox wasn't, correct?
That's correct.
He wasn't in the chat that Mr. Beller was communicating in, correct? That one, bonfire, right?
That's correct.
So your informant tells your handler or tells him, they talk about opening up this new group, right?
That's correct.
Or this new chat, I'm sorry. And in fact, your informant, Dan, is the one that sets this fuck around, find out chat, correct?
Yes, he started the chat.
Right. And he said that he's going to just pool all the guys. He says, we're going to get a chat group going, and then we'll just pool all the guys of the list we made and put them in there too. Thoughts on that? That sound about right?
Yes, that's fair.
So it's your informant, Dan, that puts Doc in this group, not Doc, right?
I believe, yeah, I think that's accurate.
So your informant, Dan, is the one that made Doc an administrator of this fuck around, find out, right?
Well, I think how it works is there's an invite that's sent out and somebody has to accept that invite.
Do you have any proof that he accepted any invite?
I think,
Well, I'm not asking what you think. See, that's speculation. I'm asking you what you know. If you know something, that's great. If you don't, that's not what I'm asking you. Do you have, sir, do you have any evidence to support that Mr. Beller ever accepted an invitation to join the fuck around, find out?
yes, sir. Because he's a group admin, that can only be accomplished if he accepted the invitation and he becomes.
And you're
part of the group.
certain of that? You're certain of that?
My knowledge.
No, sir, I'm asking you, you're
Judge,
certain.
Let him
objection.
finish his answer.
sorry.
Start
Also,
yelling.
just super argumentative. It doesn't matter if he doesn't like the answer. He's got to take the answer the witness gives him.
Go ahead and say whatever it was you were thinking.
You're certain that he accepted this invitation?
I'm 100% certain that he's a group admin on this
I
chat.
get that. I'm asking you, are you 100% certain that he, Mr. Beller, accepted the invitation and allowed him to be on the app, or did your informant Dan put him on? Fuck around, find out.
I'm
Or do
not-
you know?
I don't know exactly the sequence of how you friend somebody and how they accept somebody.
Okay.
There's a certain sequence in Wire, and I don't know how that went between Dan and Paul Bellar in order to make him a group admin.
So
Who
what I
decides
would like for you to do,
Who decides whether you're a group admin? How does that come about?
So the one thing I'm absolutely certain of is whoever creates the group is a group admin, and then it's a setting. And then when you send an invite, there's another setting as to whether you're an admin or not. And those settings can be adjusted after the friend request is accepted. To my knowledge, that's how it works.
Okay, thank you.
Can I approach you?
Yes,
Still talking about the fuck around, find out, Chad. You
Can we
familiarize-
see what you're showing the witness?
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry, I apologize. I didn't pay attention to this. I'm actually showing you two documents. I'm showing you a FD 1023, which is a FBI report dated, the source of the report is July 29th. We already have that. Show you. Does it look familiar to you?
So this looks like the raw chat log from Wire of the FAFO group, the Fuck Around Find Out group.
Right, so it's this group we're talking about right here, correct?
Correct,
Starts on July 29, 2020, correct?
correct.
We please zoom our, use that zoom and just make it just no zoom, leave it up. So you'd agree, July 29, 2020 is the inception of this FOFA group,
FAFO.
FAFO. July 29th, that's when it started, right?
Yes, sir.
You'd agree, what you have here is a bunch of messages from this chat group, correct?
This is the running chat log.
Running, that's all the messages coming through and back and forth, correct?
Correct.
In fact, there is two pages there. Would you agree with that?
That's fair. Yes.
Okay. And you would agree that what you have here is actually all of the messages start, well, not all, but they start on, you're starting at the inception here of July 29th, 2020. And that first message, Gunny, matches up with, I'm sorry, gang matches up with the message you have up here, correct?
Correct.
Do me a favor. Tell me how many pages you got to get to before you get to that message that's in the block. It's in the black box that's pointed out for you to testify to.
It's on the second page.
Second page. So there's roughly how many messages prior to that?
There's 7 messages prior to that.
Okay. And I think, did I count 16 pages there? No, I already forgot how many.
15, I think you said.
15? 15. This is what you gave the jury, right?
Yes, sir.
Do me another favor. I want you to go through that entire 15 pages of messages. You find Doc's name in there. Do that for me. Find his name.
Counselor, I've made it through and I did not see Doc's name in there.
Do me one better. Go through all those stacks of reports, all the exhibits, everything that you have in your possession based on this investigation, and you find me one time where Doc ever posted or responded to anything on the Fuck Around Find Out chat. You can't, can you?
I mean, you're asking me for something that would take quite a bit of research.
He's on trial.
Judge.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't yell. I
Objection. This
apologize.
is
I'm getting too
so
loud.
Inappropriate.
I'm a little frustrated, Your Honor, but I.
Inappropriate over and over again. And I've sat here, Judge. And it's like busting out my
Up to
eardrums.
now,
He's
He's
on
he's
trial.
just got a little carried away on this one.
He is on trial for materially supporting a terrorist act, correct?
He's on trial for material support for terrorism.
Terrorist act, right? Do you know the statute? You, or is it because it's a state statute?
I'm generally familiar with it.
The main actor in this case Is Adam Fox, do you agree with me, right?
I'd say Adam Fox and Barry Croft.
Okay. You present to this jury on July 27th, I'm sorry, 29th, you present this exhibit to this jury, correct?
Counselor, I'm going
I'm
over
sorry,
facts. of the
you
case.
read, let me follow, you read this exhibit that's presented to this jury, correct?
This particular
Yes, this one,
exhibit?
this
Yes, this exhibit was read.
This exhibit involves the fuck around, find out chat, correct?
That's correct.
As Adam Fox's chat group, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Beller is on trial regarding Adam Fox's plan to kidnap the governor, correct?
Among other things.
You don't think for 1 minute that it would be important to go through that entire chat to ensure that what you're presenting to this jury actually included my client? You don't think that's important?
I think if there was exculpatory information, it is definitely important for me to bring that forward.
Then I'll ask you one more time. All your paperwork, your discovery, you cannot show me one time, you can't show me one time where my client ever posted anything on this fuck around, find out chat, correct?
That's fair.
Thank you. All right. In the beginning, you showed a video of my client. It's exhibit 15. It's a video. It's number 31. I'm not quite sure what the letters. Can you play that, please? It's the video where he's shooting the mannequin.
So 15 or 30?
It was 30. I think it's 31. It is 31. It's 15. I don't know what letters it are. It didn't say on the thing what the letter was. It's the CPL force one. 15. It's very short. It says CPL, Paul CPL.
Yes, Councilor, I know the video you're speaking of, I just don't know which exhibit it is.
Well, I know when I open it up, it's 15 and then it's number 31 out of how I received it didn't have like the letters to it.
When you say 31,
30, is it 31?
no, I'm just asking, is that the exhibit you're?
No, because I think they did 15, but they did letters. But how I received my discovery, it doesn't have the letters up top. It just has.
Well,
what
it's got
numbers.
15's got A-QQ ideology.
I believe it's 15 double E.
Is that listed as Paul CPL force?
Video, LR, Facebook, unified message, and then a series of numbers. Show you on my computer.
Yeah.
This is video that you'll.
I would appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Could you play that for me, please?
What exhibit was it?
15 double E.
Thank you.
You recall that being played for the jury?
I do. Yes, sir.
And when you were asked to testify, you said, that's Mr. Bellar training, right?
Yes,
You said you don't know when it happened, but it was posted on his Facebook, right?
correct. And I do have the date here listed on the spreadsheet. I didn't recall at the time what the date was.
Looks pretty violent, right?
Training,
To you. I mean, he shot somebody in the chest and right in the face, right? I mean, I'm just asking you, it looks pretty grimacing to you, correct?
I mean, shooting a person, it's a representation of, it's not a real person, so it's a representation of what could happen and if you shot somebody.
And what is the name of that exhibit?
So it's 15 double E, it's 2019 10-13 video Bellar FB unified message with numbers.
Are you aware of what it's classified in the discovery?
No,
You're aware that it's classified Paul's?
Objection, Judge, what
I'm
is
asking.
classified to in the discovery? I don't know how that's relevant.
Okay, I'll ask it. I'll go back around the other way. You aware? This is actually gonna be better. Are you aware that that video was taken while Paul was taking his legal CPL course that was trained by an instructor in the state of Michigan for him to get his advanced CPL? Are you aware of that?
that's what I believed it was. Yes.
Okay, so of course, when you played that video to this jury, you told them it was a CPL class, right? Did you tell the jury that?
I did not describe that it was a CPL class, and what I'm saying right now is that I believe that to be the case, but at the time, I don't have anything to back it up. I believe based on the context of seeing Mr. Bellar receive a training certificate, that it was likely part of that, but I didn't feel like I could testify to that at the time.
It's listed as a false CPL course in your discovery, right?
In my discovery, I named it this naming convention that's here, so I'm not familiar with what you're discussing.
You haven't looked through the exhibits with prosecuting attorney.
This is my naming convention, so I remember sourcing this document out of the Facebook business records and then titling it via the date, and then I kept the metadata associated with it from Facebook.
Okay, we'll go this route then. You thought it was likely that it was a CPL class, right?
Yes, sir.
But you told them it was training, right?
It appears to be training to me.
CPL training,
Yes,
terrorist training. You agree with that?
yes, and if.
Thank you. Paul has left Michigan, never to return for training or anything else, correct? To your knowledge.
I don't have knowledge that he came back. I'd have a hard time saying things like never to return. But I don't know of my investigation that he came back.
Go to the preliminary exam transcript. Page 265. Again, this is from your testimony back in March 2021. We're going to go 265. We're going to start at line 25. We're going to go on to page 266. We're going to go through line 6. You with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My question to you during that exam was, to your knowledge, or your investigation, Mr. Bellar never had any plans to come back to Michigan to engage in this behavior with the governor once he left on July 27th. What's your response?
Said, well, all I know is the exhibit that I previously read, which I said he might come back, but I don't have any knowledge about him coming back to engage in the plot.
Okay, Judge, so I'm gonna object here. It's improper impeachment because it's not inconsistent with what he just said.
I asked him. Judge, if
Exactly what he
had-
just said, Judge. And then Mr. Kirkpatrick brought this up. You know what, Judge? I'm sorry. Never mind. I'll withdraw the objection.
Witness's testimony speaks for itself. He clarified any paraphrasing by Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Right, it's just that impeachment is for, you go back to transcripts when the witness is saying something inconsistent. This is not that.
Mr. Kirkpatrick was phrasing it as though.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Did you believe that was inconsistent, Mr. Kirkpatrick?
I did, but I could have been mistaken. Maybe he answered correctly and said, to his knowledge, he had no knowledge that Mr. Bellar ever came back to the state of Michigan. If that's your testimony,
That's what I heard from him.
if that's your testimony, then I withdraw the impeachment. To your knowledge, he never came back and was engaged in any training with anyone.
That's correct.
He never came back and trained with Adam Fox, correct?
This is all after
With
July
any-
27.
So from July 27th, when Mr. Beller leaves, up until event 22, Beller warning. Event 22 on 8/20, Beller warning. Mr. Beller is not actively involved in any of the meetings that are going on with Adam Fox or anyone else, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, about that time, the end of July, first part of August, Dan also left the Wolverine Watch, correct?
Sometime in August,
Something fair, that's fair.
Dan left the Wolverine Watchman.
When he left, he handpicked some guys that were at Paul's house on July 7th, 2020, and took them with him, didn't he?
Which guys are you referring
Well,
to?
who all was in the final group that Dan was involved in from Mr. Beller's group that he created on July 7th? Who was with Adam Fox for that?
Clarify, which final group are we talking about?
When the training starts, when Dan leaves and takes some of the watchmen with him, who does he take with him?
First off, I don't think that's a fair assessment. Dan
Okay.
didn't leave and take watchmen with him.
On August 20th, you put out, that's when Mr. Beller warns the group that the police went to his house. Do we please have exhibit 187? And again, just to clarify, this notification that the law enforcement was at Mr. Beller's house, this went out on the bonfire chat, correct?
Yes, sir.
This did not go on fuck around and find out chat, correct?
That's correct.
And you showed this to the jury, and again, if we could go to page 4 of the exhibit, please. That first black box, as we're looking at it on the left, so on the left side of the page, yeah, the left side, of the page, that first black. Okay. So again, the black box is what you read to the jury, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that is what it helps you to know where to go to within that exhibit. Is that fair?
Yes.
Would you please click out of that? Do you have that exhibit up in front of you?
I do.
Exhibit 177 or 187?
Yes.
Would you please do me a favor? Right before that black boxed message that starts off with currently I don't even live in Michigan anymore. That's Doc, correct?
Yes.
Would you, for the jury, please read the next 2 communications that are not black box for the jury?
Okay. And you said right before.
Right, we're wayward. We're starting with wayward. You've done nothing wrong. Let's start
Okay.
with that.
Sure. So Wayward, which is Brandon Caserta, stated, "You've done nothing wrong, though. They could have just been fishing. Your neighbor kind of knew what you're about, and your roommate is soft. They could have just been casting a line and seeing what they can catch."
And now read what Doc says, right below that.
Sorry, there it is. Paul Beller stated, "Exactly. We haven't done anything illegal or wrong. They're probably just pissed because we're not open to public like the rest of the cliche militias around. They're just sniffing their nose around most likely."
This is on August 20th, correct?
No, this is August 18th.
Oh, I'm sorry, August 18th. I apologize. This is August 18th, right?
Yes, sir.
After he's been out of the state for almost a month, right?
Yes.
He's not been involved in any of these meetings with Adam Fox from July 27th, when he did what he did with your informant, correct? From July 27th, right?
Yes, sir.
All the way through until he sends this out, correct?
Yes, sir.
So he has no idea what Adam Fox is even talking about, correct? You wouldn't know that.
Yeah, I can't
There's
speculate
nothing in
about
your
it.
investigation that would suggest, let me rephrase that. There's nothing in your investigation to show that they had communication.
That's
Correct.
correct.
Do me a favor, can you go through that entire exhibit for me and tell me where you find either Pete Musico, Joe Morrison, Barry Croft, or Adam Fox's name in that chat?
I don't have a problem going through the exhibit, but I'm aware based on my investigation that in the QRF bonfire parties chat, none of those individuals you listed were a member of that chat with the exception of
Right.
Bellar.
So he's not talking to anyone other than the individuals in the group, correct?
That's correct. It goes
And they,
through.
and they don't include Adam Fox, right?
That's correct.
Doesn't include Barry Croft, correct?
That's correct.
Doesn't include Pete and Joe, right?
That's correct.
Could I please have exhibit 188? I'm almost done, Judge.
Read my mind.
Huh?
You're reading my mind.
I can look at the clock and get a feel where you're at. If you could please, sir, click on in the lower, the left corner here that's already highlighted in black.
Black marks.
Yes, yes, please. This was presented to the jury. This is Mr. Beller communicating with his sister Liz, right? Well, you don't know who he should.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that it
Right.
was his sister. I just recognized the common last name.
Right. So he's communicating with a family. Let's just leave it.
Sure.
And he's basically saying, hey, if the cops or any officials come to any of you asking questions about me, just please don't tell them anything. And Lizzie says, WTF, we all know what that means. You mean, why would they, LOL? And he said, cops question my old roommate about me and some movements I was in. Some movements I was in. And a lot of other things that were very serious topics and stuff that we should not know about. I'm no English major, but you would agree with me, I was in is past tense, correct?
Yes.
And again, up to this point, even as we speak, August 18th, 2020, up to this point, you are not aware in your investigation of any involvement that Mr. Bellar has with Adam Fox regarding this plot to kidnap the governor, correct?
I would say any direct communication.
That's perfect. Thank you. Bring up 194. Please click on the bottom corner that's outlined in black. This is a conversation between Paul and Ty Garvin, correct?
Yes, sir.
And this is, you presented this to the jury, exhibit 194, about Paul starting a group down in South Carolina called the Palmetto State Goons, is that right?
Yes.
He goes on to say, hopefully I don't end up on another list with this one. I really am sorry for what happened recently, just hoping it didn't piss any of you guys off. That's what he says, right?
Yes, sir.
August 22nd of 2020, his concern is being on another list, right? Correct? Based on what he wrote here.
Yes.
Nothing in here about planning to kidnap any politicians, correct? In this writing, right?
Correct.
Nothing in here about breaking any laws in this particular writing, correct?
Correct.
Just hoping that he doesn't end up on another list. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
And again, Paul's no longer in the state of Michigan, right?
That's correct.
At some point after the notification that the police were at his house on the bonfire chat by Mr. Beller, right?
Yes.
individuals within the Wolverine Watchman thought he might be a Fed. You recall that?
I recall one reference, I believe, from Pete Musico, that he and Dan may be a Fed.
Okay. They believe that Mr. Beller might be a Fed, right?
There was a statement about that.
Thank you. You testified yesterday and you said, let me make sure I get it correct. Everything got real after Luther. You recall saying that, making that comment? I'm talking about Luther, the training on September 10th.
I recall you asking me about that, and I recall saying that generally speaking, the plan became more refined and was established after Luther.
Well, I was actually talking, I meant, when the prosecutor was questioning you, and you talked about Luther, I think you made a comment that everything got real at Luther, right? You recall saying?
I recall people asking me about that, but I don't recall offering like, hey, everything got real. But I generally recall the line of testimony.
Things got real, and this is September 10th of 2020, correct?
Well, for me, things were real the entire investigation.
I understand that, but I'm asking you specifically the plot to kidnap the governor. You would
So-
agree with me that September 10th was a pivotal moment in this case, correct?
It was one of many pivotal moments.
And again, Mr. Beller had been gone for a month and a half now.
Yes.
You have no knowledge that Paul continued in training after he left the state of Michigan, correct?
I really don't have any knowledge of what Paul did after he left the state of Michigan.
That's not
Whether
what
he
I'm
trained or whether he didn't.
I understand that, and I get where you're going. I'm asking you a very simple, easy question. It's specific.
Judge, objection. Like,
Your Honor, it's not a
He's
responsive
he's
answer.
just being argumentative. I'm asking you very simple, easy questions here.
When you say train, what do you mean?
Training, I mean,
Any training?
correct. Let me ask it a different way, Your Honor. You have no knowledge that Paul continued any training with Adam Fox or anyone associated with the ultimate plan or plot to kidnap the governor of this state after he left the state of Michigan. That's fair, correct?
That is definitely fair.
Did you put up, and I've got like three things left, Judge.
That's fine.
Did you put up exhibit 107, please? This is the rank structure that you attributed to Mr. Beller. Well, now you attributed, let me rephrase that. This is the rank structure that you testified to before this jury, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the purpose of this was to illustrate to the jury what the rank structure was with the Wolverine Watchman. Does that sound fair?
So I just testified of facts, and then what is being illustrated to the jury and the whole prosecution plan and why it's there. That's all the prosecution's decision
Perfect.
and how they present it.
Right.
So this is something I saw from June 9th. It was
Okay.
on the chat and Paul Bellar sent it out.
Perfect. It's got Mr. Beller down there as a sergeant, as doc.
Yes, sir.
Could you please put up exhibit number 212? This is, let me just ask you, do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, sir.
What is this exhibit?
This is the handwritten notebook found on October 7th from execution of the search warrants at the Dunn Road property.
And that talks about the Wolverine Watchman?
Yes.
And you said there was a couple sergeants you said there was a couple sergeants that were included or added from the previous one I just showed you?
Yes.
Who was that?
From my recollection on the
You can go back to the
Caleb-
other exhibit if you need to.
Okay. I think it's Caleb Franks and B Puff, which is
Okay.
Brian Puffenberger.
Tell me who's missing from the sergeants.
That would be Paul Bellar.
Thank you. Could I have exhibit number 121, please? Recall this photograph?
Yes, I do.
What is this photograph?
This is a photograph from June 18th, 2020. So this is the first time everybody met Adam Fox in person.
You talked about the significance. They were wearing Hawaiian shirts to signify the blue, right? Remember testifying to that?
I remember testifying a lot about Hawaiian shirts.
That's Paul Beller on the far right, right?
That's correct.
He's not wearing a Hawaiian shirt, is he?
That's correct.
Paul Beller never traveled up north or engaged in any surveillance of the governor's home, correct?
That's correct.
Paul Beller never trained for a specific plot to kidnap Governor Whitman, correct? To your knowledge.
Judge, I'm gonna object. That's the province of the jury to decide all that.
Well,
You want to get more specific?
I'll get more specific. To your knowledge, based on your investigation, Mr. Beller did not engage in training with any of the individuals that ultimately went on with this plot to kidnap the governor once he left the state of Michigan. Is that fair?
No, that's not fair.
It's not fair. So he trained with individuals after he left the state of Michigan on July 27th?
I'm sorry, after he left the
Yeah,
state.
after.
Oh, okay. After he left the state, I have no knowledge of him training with anybody.
And you have no knowledge of him even coming back to the state of Michigan, correct?
That's correct.
But Dan is your informant, correct?
Yes, sir.
Dan is involved with this group from the beginning all the way to the end. Is that a fair statement?
Which group?
And Fox's group.
No, Dan met Adam Fox after his group had been established, and then Dan moved from the Wolverine Watchman towards Adam Fox's group after it had already existed and been established.
Okay, so that's fair. So after Mr. Beller leaves the state of Michigan the end of July, Dan ultimately gets involved with Adam's group. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You're in direct communication with Dan, right?
Yes,
Dan debriefs you every day, or not every day, but every time he does something significant in this case, he debriefs you, right?
we try to keep up with it as best we can.
Well, certainly if it's something important in the case, you want to make sure that you write it down,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes,
And he continues with this group all the way up until the takedown in October, correct? The arrest.
yes,
So one would assume that he's letting you know what's going on, right?
I think he did a pretty good job of letting me know what's going on.
Something pretty important to that would be Mr. Beller's back and he's engaged in training, correct? Is that
Oh,
fair?
absolutely. Yes,
He never told you anything, right?
he did not tell me that.
I have a good question.
Go ahead.
Start, Judge?
Yeah.
Great. I don't think I'm gonna take that long, so I might be able to fit it in before lunch, Judge.
All right. No, we'll do it after lunch.
Thank you, Judge. How you doing, 18 and Bluff?
Hanging in there.
Yep, okay. You got a binder in front of you, right?
I
That
do.
big, thick one to the right of you.
Yes.
Okay. What is it?
So that is my previous testimony in other exams for this case.
This case, right?
Correct.
All that transcript, that's all your testimony?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
No problem, no problem. All that is your testimony, right?
Yes,
Did you say that's hundreds of pages of testimony?
yes,
You heard Mr. Kirkpatrick a bunch of times during his cross-examination of you here today and yesterday say things to you like, you know, "It's gonna give you some easy questions. This is an easy question, right?"
yes,
Okay, and you heard him say too a bunch of times that, I'm asking you these background questions, not gonna hold you to your answers, right?
correct.
And you previously testified that many times, right, in front of you?
There's a lot of hours of testimony here.
So I'm gonna go back a second. I'm gonna go back to Mr. Musical's attorney. Mr. Johnson asked you a bunch of cross-examination questions, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. He asked you questions about, urban tactics and guerrilla tactics, correct?
Yes,
All right. Does his client, Mr. Musico, who lives with Mr. Morrison, do they live in an urban area?
no, I don't consider that unit to be urban.
Okay. And so if they were going to practice urban tactics in an actual urban area, they would have to leave the city of Munich to go to a city and practice those things. Is that right?
That's fair.
So if they wanted to do urban tactics or guerrilla warfare, they would have to go into another city that they do not live in order to do those tactics. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay. Because they didn't live in one, right?
that's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson asked you some questions about, there were common interests between Mr. Musical and Mr. Fox. Do you recall that set of questions?
I do.
Do you recall, hey, they shared pro Second Amendment ideologies, correct?
Generally speaking, yes.
They shared common interests like liberty, right?
Yes,
Like hating the government, right?
yes,
Okay, all of those legal, right?
yes,
You
ma'am.
can hate the government in this country, right?
Absolutely,
Okay, and you can love liberty, right? You
absolutely.
can be pro 2A, correct?
Yes,
Okay, but the exhibit you were played was not about common interests that Mr. Fox sent over to Mr. Morrison, was it?
no, it wasn't.
It was about common goals, wasn't it?
Yes,
All right, can you play exhibit number, Agent Eris, can you play exhibit number, sorry. Need it. Oh, I got this here, hang on. 160. Oh. 103. Can you put the transcript up?
What Barry said, we have the same common goal, that I'm sure we do.
Same common goal, right?
yes, ma'am.
In fact, they were strangers before this friend request on June 8th, right?
Yes.
They weren't buddies, right?
My knowledge, they'd never met in person. They didn't have any other contact.
They never played a game of poker together, right?
Correct,
They didn't ride motorcycles together, correct?
not to my knowledge.
They were strangers before this clip was sent, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Where they have the same common goal, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. There was a lot of mention by Mr. Johnson of other sources. For the name Mr. Robeson, familiar with that person?
I am.
Well, Your Honor,
Plunk, is that
at
correct?
this point, I object to mischaracterization. This exhibit is a conversation between Fox and Morrison, not Mr. Rizzo.
Yeah, I know. He brought it up though during his questioning of the witness, Judge. So I'm addressing.
Go ahead.
these. Thank you. You mentioned other sources. You asked about Mr. Robeson, right?
Yes,
Okay. And Mr. Robeson never had contact with Mr. Johnson's client, correct?
that's correct.
All right. And you were asked about Ms. Plunk, correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Plunk never had contact with Pete Musico, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Now, do you tell sources like Dan during the course of this investigation? Do you tell him about other sources involved in the investigation?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Well, first off, it's a safety issue. And second off, you need to corroborate the reporting. So you need to independently determine what is happening. If the sources know who each other are, it could influence what's going on. So we're just trying to collect the facts as the investigation's happening. And it wouldn't be safe for them to know. They're not trained. Basically, their job is to make the recording and report what they see.
So you didn't tell Dan about Mr. Robeson being a source
Not during the investigation.
or Ms. Plunk, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you tell him, you've mentioned during the course of your testimony here, you've talked about Wisconsin, right?
Yes,
You talked about training in Cambria, Wisconsin,
yes,
and you've talked about how undercover agent with the FBI, Mark, went to Wisconsin training. Is that right?
yes.
Did you tell Dan about, hey, there's this undercover agent, he's gonna be there? Tell us about that.
So as we were planning our operation for Wisconsin, I told Dan that if things got out of hand, we'd have a friendly there, but I didn't tell him who it was. So I did tell Mark who Dan was and gave Mark a picture of Dan so he could recognize him. Things got out of hand. But that was the extent of it.
All right, I want to turn to Mr. Ballard's questioning here. You said the word a couple of times, disrupt. You were trying to disrupt the Wolverine Watchman. Is that a term that's in use in terrorism investigations?
Yes, it is.
What does it mean? And can you tell the jury a little bit about it?
So in counterterrorism investigations, the whole goal is to stop a terrorist attack. And in the FBI, stopping that attack doesn't always have to occur through an arrest. Generally speaking, you can arrest somebody or you don't arrest somebody, but just interviewing somebody or going out in the field and having a presence, letting somebody know that there's an investigation, working with local law enforcement. Sometimes there's another charge they can be picked up on. So those are all actions that can happen to try and disrupt whatever plot is going forward.
Thank you. You were asked about the speakerphone conversation. If you go to your significant events timeline, can you tell us what training there was a speakerphone conversation with Mr. Morrison and Mr. Fox?
Yeah, so that's number 11, and that's the mandatory training on June 14th, 2020 in Minute on Dunn Road.
Okay. And it was suggested to you that Dan, in fact, on that day invited Mr. Fox to training. Do you remember those questions?
I do.
Okay. And do you recall exhibit, actually, could you play exhibit 2? I'm sorry. It's just one second. Thank you. Exhibit number 119, if you could play that for us with the associated training. You told us there was a speakerphone conversation where Mr. Morrison called Mr. Fox on Facebook and put it on the speakerphone, and then there was like a group that was around that, correct?
Yes.
Dan was part of that.
Yes.
Mr. Morrison was part of that.
Yes.
Mr. Musico was part of that.
Yes.
Mr. Bellard had left by then, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, you could play that.
I mean, at least we can use Thursday to, kind of get to know each other a little bit, break the ice type shit.
Yeah, 100%.
That'd be cool with that.
And then you reviewed that conversation in its entirety, right?
I did.
And roughly how many minutes is that?
It's 8 to 12 minutes, somewhere in that range.
Okay, and you've isolated another clip for us, or the agents or the team has isolated another clip for us from that conversation, is that right?
Yes,
Are you familiar with exhibit 266?
I am.
Okay, and what is that?
That's a statement made by Joe Morrison later in the same conversation.
Who's he making the statement to?
To Adam Fox.
Okay, on the speakerphone conversation again?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to move for its admission.
Doesn't pertain to my client, so.
I haven't heard an objection, so go ahead.
No objection.
It's admitted, Judge?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to play 266 for us.
We could do it after. Yeah, okay. No, I totally agree with you on that. Just, we gotta get everybody's on the same book. We just gotta get everybody on the same book.
Everybody's in the same book, Mr. Morrison says, right?
Correct,
We've just got to get everybody on the same fucking page, correct?
correct.
Thank you. You can take that down. I want to turn to Mr. Kirkpatrick's questioning of you, his cross-examination. I'm going to try to take this in order, okay? So we have the back shack meeting, right? We played, I don't know, roughly 10 clips about the back shack meeting, right?
Yes, ma'am.
June 20th, where is that on the significant events timeline?
The June 20th, that's item 13 here, on the significant events timeline.
Okay. You agree that some point in the meeting, there was discussion about legal ways, or at least what Mr. Bellar thinks is legal ways to arrest the governor. Is that right?
Yes,
That legal way to arrest the governor includes going to a boog judge, correct?
yes.
Objection, mischaracterization. Because, a judge that's conservative is a boog judge now
It's actually part of the words that were said in the clip that Mr.
by my client?
Kirkpatrick. But in the clip Mr. Kirkpatrick played, in that clip, they're talking about going to a boog judge and a constitutional sheriff, and that's what I want
Okay.
to ask about.
Go ahead,
Maybe
go ahead.
Sure.
they said they would like to go to a boog judge. Is that right?
I recall this, yes,
Not a state of Michigan circuit court judge, right?
that's
Not
correct,
a state of Michigan, district court judge, right?
correct,
Not a probate judge, right?
correct,
Not a court of claims judge, correct?
correct.
A boog judge.
I don't recall the exact transcript, I didn't have that, but that seems fair based on what I heard.
Okay. And a constitutional sheriff, correct?
Yes, ma'am,
All right. Not a deputy sheriff, correct?
correct,
Not a county sheriff, correct?
correct,
Not a deputy county sheriff, correct?
correct,
A constitutional sheriff, right?
correct.
Okay, thank you. In fact, in this meeting, aside from, talking about their legal ways of arresting, there were other legal ways they believe they could maybe arrest the governor. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay. And but was violence also discussed at the meeting?
yes,
Okay, I'd like, are you familiar with exhibits 279, 280, and 281 from the meeting?
yes, I am.
Okay, and what are
And
they?
Your Honor, at this point, I don't have a problem with them playing anything they want to play. Okay, I'm not gonna have a problem with that. But we all have given our exhibits in advance. Now they want to start playing pieces that I've not had a chance. They wanted me to give them all my exhibits. I did. And I know I'm not going to object to it coming in because I know where it's coming from, but I would ask that we at least break for lunch so that I can at least see what these
Was gonna
exhibits
be what
are.
I was gonna do.
Thank you, Your Honor.
In my mind. We're gonna break for lunch. We'll see everybody. Yeah, we'll see everybody about 1:20.
They're just going to pick and choose again. I'm going to crush them.
Let me see your notes of it list.
I'd swipe with a piece here and a piece there that I got to put together on the
You got
fly.
anything else?
That's all I got. Fairness.
I'll send it, Judge. Happy to.
Thank you.